These rock and roll artists played loud, lived fast, and died young. Fame gave them lights and crowds, but pills and pain followed them everywhere. 20 rock and roll artists who died from overdoses is not just a list, it's a graveyard of voices that faded too soon. Let us follow the silence that lasted for weeks before anyone even knew they were gone. 1. Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix wasn't just a guitarist. He was a revolution dressed in velvet. He made guitars cry, scream, and whisper. He didn't play them. He possessed them. Stages didn't contain him. Studios barely captured him. When he lit his guitar on fire at Monterey, it wasn't a stunt. It was a sacrifice. Every note he played was a detour into another universe. No one came close. No one ever will. But stars that are bright always burn too fast. September 18, 1970. London, just 27, found unresponsive in a rented flat, lying face up in bed. A handful of sleeping pills in his system. Vesperax, heavy stuff. The official report said he choked on his own vomit. Alone, silent, drenched in fame, but isolated in that final hour. He didn't want to die. He was still planning albums, tours, bigger things. But his body was done. Worn down by constant motion, numbed by whatever substances helped him sleep. He wasn't partying, he was trying to rest. The world called it an accident. Others whispered foul play. None of that changed the outcome. The music stopped. The man who flipped rock inside out with Purple Haze and Voodoo Child vanished in silence. There was no final solo, no farewell, just a still room, a broken chord. Hendrix didn't just change music. He rewrote what it could be. He didn't live long, but he lived loud. And when he left, the silence that followed felt permanent. 2. Janis Joplin. Janis Joplin didn't just sing. She screamed her soul out. Her voice wasn't smooth. It was wild, scarred, full of ache. She didn't polish her edges. She sharpened them. Every word she belted out felt like it was ripped from a wound that never closed. People didn't watch her perform. They watched her bleed. But even fire runs out of oxygen. October 4th, 1970, Los Angeles, the Landmark Motor Hotel. She was 27 years old, just days after Hendrix. She was found on the floor of her room, alone. Opioids overdose. The dose was too pure, too powerful. One shot, and she was gone. They say her hand was still reaching for the cigarettes she never got to light. She had just finished recording her best work, Pearl. Her band was waiting for her in the studio the next day. She never showed up. And when the phone finally rang, it wasn't her voice. It was the end. Janis wasn't some fragile flower. She was raw steel. But she was tired. The loneliness followed her like a shadow. The crowds cheered, but she still walked back to empty hotel rooms. Her voice shook buildings. Her pain never shook free. Everyone knew she was using it. Everyone saw her spiraling. But in the music world, pain is just part of the costume, until the body gives out. 3. Amy Winehouse. Amy Winehouse sounded like she was born in a different century. Her voice was smoke, sorrow, and soul packed into a body too small for the weight she carried. She didn't try to sound old school. She just was. Billie Holiday with a bruised heart. Her songs weren't just about pain. They were confessions set to jazz, R&B, and heartbreak. But the world wanted the pain more than the person. July 23, 2011. London. She was 27 years old, found alone in her Camden flat. Blood alcohol 5 times the legal limit. That wasn't a party. That was a cry swallowed in vodka. A final relapse after weeks of trying to stay sober. Her body couldn't take it. Everyone watched her unravel. Paparazzi stalked her rehab stints like episodes of reality TV. Crowds laughed when she slurred through concerts. The media devoured every breakdown. But few ever asked if she was okay. She had tried, pulled out of tours, canceled shows, tried to clean up. But addiction doesn't care about platinum records or Grammys. It waits. And when you're weak, it wins. She didn't overdose on stage. She died in silence, in the shadows. Not from opioids, not from crack, just from despair drowned in alcohol. Amy sang like her life depended on it, because it did. But she ran out of second chances. 4. Tom Petty. Tom Petty didn't scream to be heard. He didn't need to. His songs spoke like letters you forgot you wrote. Simple, honest, timeless. Free Fallin' American Girl, I Won't Back Down. They weren't just hits. They were blueprints for staying sane in a world that constantly tilts sideways. He looked like the guy next door, but he carried entire generations in his voice, and he never stopped, not even when his body begged him to. October 2nd, 2017. Malibu, found unconscious at home, dead hours later. Cause of death? A toxic mix. Fentanyl, oxycodone, temazepam, alprazolam. Pills prescribed for pain, anxiety, insomnia. His body, worn down from decades of touring, finally gave out. He had a fractured hip, still hit the road, still played 53 shows in just a few months. Gritting through the pain, smiling through the haze, playing as if everything was fine. He gave the crowd magic, even while quietly breaking apart. Tom wasn't trying to get high. He was trying to survive. The medicine cabinet became his crutch, his armor, his only way to keep going. But pills don't warn you. They don't care about intention. They just build up until something snaps. There was no overdose in a seedy hotel. No scandal, no outburst. Just a man trying to manage the pain and losing. His voice always sounded like someone holding on through the storm. 5. Prince. Prince didn't follow rules. He broke them, melted them down, and wore them as high heels and eyeliner. He wasn't just an artist. He was a universe. A one-man orchestra. Purple Rain, When Doves Cry, Kiss. He made music that dripped with desire, sorrow, and genius. He played 27 instruments, owned every stage he stepped on. But behind the velvet and sparkle was a man in pain. April 21st, 2016, Paisley Park. Found unresponsive in an elevator. Gone at 57. Cause of death? Fentanyl, the fake kind, laced into counterfeit Vicodin. He thought he was easing pain. He was walking into a trap. Prince had been dealing with intense hip pain for years. Decades of dancing, jumping, performing like his life depended on it. Finally caught up to him. He didn't complain, didn't cancel. He just took what was given and kept moving. The pills weren't to get high. They were to keep the show alive. But fentanyl doesn't care about legacies. It strikes quietly, suddenly. Even kings. He had just performed days before, still dazzling, still flawless. No one saw the end coming, not even him. He'd flown home after an emergency landing days earlier. People were worried, but not worried enough. When Prince died, it didn't feel real. The sky didn't feel purple anymore. The music industry stopped cold. One of the last true gods had fallen, not in scandal, not in flames, but in silence. He lit up stages around the world. Lane Staley. Lane Staley didn't sing, he confessed. His voice sounded like a haunted house, beautiful, broken, and echoing with pain. Alice in Chains wasn't grunge's party, it was its funeral. And Lane was the preacher. Every song felt like a warning. Every lyric was a goodbye in disguise. People loved the darkness in his music. They just didn't realize how real it was. April 19th, 2002. Seattle. Lane's body was found in his apartment, or what was left of it. 2 weeks dead. Skin sunken. Needle still nearby. Opioids and stimulants. A speedball. The same mix that took Belushi, but this wasn't a wild binge. It was a routine. A slow-motion death. The blinds were closed. The TV was still on. There were piles of unread mail by the door. No one had called. No one had knocked. Lane faded out and the world didn't notice. Not for days. He'd been missing from the spotlight for years. No tours, no interviews. Just rumors and silence. Fans waited. Friends are worried. But Lane had already disappeared before his heart stopped beating. He used to fill stadiums with that voice. Now, he couldn't fill a room. Addiction didn't just destroy him, it erased him. Slowly, quietly. The guy who wrote Down in a Hole lived there until it swallowed him. No final words, no last album. Just a body discovered too late, and a voice that still echoes, like a ghost. He didn't go out with a bang. He crumbled, and no one was watching when it happened. 7. Scott Weiland. Scott Weiland looked like he belonged on a poster. Sharp cheekbones, snake hip swagger, velvet voice. But beneath the sunglasses and stage moves was a man always walking a tightrope. He fronted Stone Temple Pilots, then Velvet Revolver. His voice could growl like a beast or soar like a prayer. He was grunge's wild card, a frontman you couldn't predict, and neither could he. December 3, 2015, Minnesota, tour bus. He was 48 years old, found dead in the back lounge, cold, alone. The toxicology report listed stimulants, alcohol, methylene dioxyamphetamine, heart disease, asthma, a mess of pills and time bomb symptoms, another slow death that everyone saw coming, and no one stopped. He'd been fighting addiction for decades, rehab after rehab, arrests, relapses, comebacks, headlines, so he kept showing up. On stage, he was magnetic. Off stage, he was unraveling. Slurred interviews, missed cues, blank stares. People wrote him off as a burnout, but inside, he was just exhausted. Tired of trying to stay clean, tired of pretending to be okay. His wife said he was using it again. His bandmates said he was slipping, but no one knew how bad it really was until he stopped breathing. He didn't die with a guitar in his hands. He died curled up in the back of a bus no one was checking. Scott wasn't reckless. He was running from something that never stopped chasing him. 8. D. Ramone. D. Ramone didn't act punk. He was a punk, raw, loud, dangerous. His bass lines weren't just rhythm, they were heartbeat. He helped invent a sound that would outlive them all. The Ramones were chaos wrapped in leather, and D. was the gas can behind the fire. But even legends get tired, and D. got tired early. June 5, 2002. Los Angeles. Found dead in his apartment. He was 50 years old, opioids overdose. The needle was nearby, a relapse. One more hit after years of trying to stay clean. One hit too many. He'd been off the stuff, tried painting, tried poetry, tried surviving. But opioids don't let go easily, and the world outside the Ramones was quieter, colder, harder to navigate. He was the soul of the band, but the first to fall. He wrote 53rd and 3rd, Rockaway Beach, Chinese Rock, songs that sounded fun but were soaked in desperation. Everyone sang along. No one stopped to hear the warning. He wasn't glamorous, he was broken. He made punk look fun, but it never was. It was a fight to stay standing. And D. lost that fight alone in a small room. No crowd, no curtain call, just another headline about another overdose. His bass still rattles in speakers, but the man behind it disappeared long before the music stopped. D. gave punk its voice and died the way punk always warned us, loud on the inside, silent on the way out. 9. Bradley Nowell. Bradley Nowell sang about addiction like someone who had already lived through the end. Sublime made music for beaches and bar fights, love and withdrawal. His voice had a laid-back charm, but underneath there was always this heaviness. Ska, punk, reggae, hip-hop. It didn't matter the genre. If Brad sang it, you could feel the struggle between light and dark. He joked. He smiled. But he was sinking. May 25, 1996, San Francisco, a Travelodge motel, just 28. Sublime was finally on the verge. Their self-titled major label debut was done. They were about to blow up. But that morning, their manager opened the door and found Brad dead on the floor. Opioids, too much, too fast. Just hours after his wife and baby flew home. Just days before his face was on MTV. He'd tried to quit, again and again, for his band, for his family, for his son, Jacob. But opioids don't care about fathers or contracts or love. It whispers when the world is quiet. And Brad listens one more time. He didn't overdose at a party. It wasn't a wild night. No screaming crowd, just a silent room and a man who couldn't outrun the monster he'd sung about. After his death, Sublime exploded. Radio hits, MTV rotation, sold-out tours without him. Brad didn't get to enjoy the spotlight. He got a headline and a legacy cut short. He gave us songs full of sunshine, but he died in the shadows. 11. Hillel Slovak. Hillel Slovak didn't just play guitar. He infected it with funk, punk, and fire. He was the original spark behind the Red Hot Chili Peppers, before stadiums, before hits, before MTV. There was Hillel, barefoot, sweaty, shredding through chaos. His riffs weren't polished. They were wild, messy, alive. The kind of sound that made you want to jump off a roof and dance. But Hillel was always falling, even when the band was rising. June 25, 1988, Los Angeles. He was 26 years old, found dead in his apartment, opioids overdose. No dramatic scenes, just silence and a syringe. He'd been trying to quit, again, wrote about it in his journals, drew sketches of pain and hope. But the addiction didn't care. It waited. It knew he'd come back. The Chili Peppers were on the verge. Their third album had dropped. Things were moving. But Hillel was slipping. Shows were canceled. Rehearsals missed. His bandmates saw it, felt it, but didn't know how to stop it. After he died, everything cracked. Jack Irons left the band. Anthony Kiedis disappeared. Flea spiraled. The grief didn't just hit, it burned through everything. Hillel wasn't famous when he died. He became a legend afterward. The foundation, the soul they lost before the world even knew his name. He didn't get a tribute tour or a documentary, just a paragraph in the liner notes and a permanent hole in the band. He made the guitar sound like joy during a panic attack. And then the silence took him. 12. Gram Parsons. Gram Parsons didn't look like a rock star. He looked like someone lost in the wrong decade. Cowboy boots, rhinestones, heartbreak in his eyes. But when he sang, the world stopped pretending country and rock didn't belong together. He made music that felt like dirt roads and last chances. He called it cosmic American music. It was stardust and sorrow. It was him. September 19, 1973. Joshua Tree, 26 years old, dead in a cheap motel room. Morphine and alcohol. Too much. Too fast. He'd flown out to the desert to escape, to chase stars, maybe to find God. But the substances found him first. The quiet kind of overdose. No ambulance. Just stillness and a man who never learned how to say no. He'd been using it for years. Pills, opioids, booze, always trying to fill some hole he couldn't name. He left the Byrds, formed the Flying Burrito Brothers, went solo, but the ghosts followed. And in that motel, they caught up. What happened next was surreal. A friend stole his body from LAX in a hearse, drove it into the desert, lit it on fire beneath the stars. Just like Gram always said he wanted, his ashes scattered across sand and myth. He never became a household name, not while he lived. But everyone you love who sings with twang and sadness, they're standing on his shoulders. Gram didn't die on stage, he died in limbo, between fame and obscurity, between peace and poison. And the saddest part? He was finally making the music he was born for, right before the silence took him. 13. Shannon Hoon. Shannon Hoon had the kind of voice that made you stop what you were doing and listen. High, sharp, broken. He wasn't trying to sound perfect. He sounded real. Blind Melon wasn't just another 90s band. They were weird, warm, psychedelic, and sad. And Shannon was their soul. Wild-eyed, shirtless, smiling like someone who had no idea how much pain he was carrying. October 21st, 1995. New Orleans, just 28. found dead in the band's tour bus. Stimulant overdose. The bus had been parked outside the hotel. The band was on the road. New album out. Things were happening, but Shannon was already fading. He died in his sleep, alone in a place meant to carry him forward. He had a newborn daughter. He'd gone to rehab. He promised to change. But rehab can't reach the parts of you that stay hidden. And stimulants don't care if you're trying. He'd been clean until he wasn't. The relapse came quietly without a scene. Just one line, then nothing. His body couldn't take it. His heart gave out while the rest of the world kept spinning. Blind Melon tried to go on, but it wasn't the same. The band lost more than a voice. They lost their heart. There were no headlines screaming in shock, just a sad confirmation. Another gifted soul silenced before he ever got the chance to grow old. Shannon didn't want to be a legend. He just wanted to breathe, but the weight of everything crushed him first. 15. Pete Farndon. Pete Farndon gave the Pretenders their backbone. His bass didn't just hold the songs together, it pushed them forward. He played with elegance and attitude. On stage, he looked cool, locked in, untouchable. But under the surface, Pete was spiraling. Fame gave him a spotlight. Addiction gave him a shadow. April 14th, 1983. He was 30 years old, found in the bathtub of his London home. He had passed out after taking opioids. He drowned, quiet, alone. The band had already let him go months earlier. Too many missed rehearsals. Too many nights where he didn't show up at all. They loved him, but they couldn't save him. By the time he died, the industry had already moved on. No major headlines, no tributes on TV, just a small article in the music press. Another name in a growing list of could have been and should have been. What made it worse? He wasn't just talented, he was kind. His bandmates said he had a gentle soul, but opioids don't care how good your heart is. It only cares how deep it can pull you under. He had seen success, tasted the big stages, played on hit records. But in the end, none of that mattered. When he needed help most, he was already out of the picture. Pete wasn't a rock star cliché. He was a real person with a real problem. And when the substances finally won, the world barely noticed. He gave the Pretenders their rhythm and died in silence long before his story should have ended. 16. Elvis Presley. Elvis Presley was bigger than music. He didn't just sing. He shook the world. The hips, the sneer, the voice that slipped between gospel and sin. He invented cool before anyone knew what it was. Crowds screamed. TV stations panicked. The king had arrived, and by the time they crowned him, he was already too famous to be saved. August 16, 1977. Graceland, 42 years old, found face down on the bathroom floor. The official report said cardiac arrhythmia, but that wasn't the full truth. There were 14 different substances in his system: opioids, sedatives, amphetamines, barbiturates. A pharmacy's worth of chemicals pumped into one man for years. Elvis wasn't partying. He was surviving. Barely. His body was falling apart. He was bloated, sick, and exhausted. But the tours kept coming. The cameras kept flashing. No one told him to stop. They just gave him more pills. He'd gone from revolutionary to prisoner, trapped in Graceland, trapped in his own body. He was the most famous man on earth, and he was completely alone. He died not on stage, not in a blaze of glory, but on the cold tile of a private bathroom. His heart gave out. But it was the system around him that destroyed him. They built a myth around him, a legend, but they ignored the man, the pain, the addiction. Elvis gave the world everything. And when he collapsed, it gave him nothing in return but silence. The king didn't lose his crown. He drowned in it. 17. Michael Hutchence. Michael Hutchence was everything a frontman should be. Magnetic, dangerous, impossible to ignore. INXS wasn't just a band, it was a pulse, and Michael was the heart. His voice was smooth and seductive, and his stage presence made stadiums feel like bedrooms. He sang like he had secrets. And he did. A lot of them. November 22, 1997. Sydney, Ritz-Carlton Hotel. He was 37 years old, found hanging by his belt behind the hotel room door. Alone. They called it self-inflicted death. But his system told a longer story. Alcohol, stimulant, Prozac. A fog of substances that blurred the line between escape and self-destruction. Michael had been unraveling. Custody battles, fame fatigue, depression that kept growing heavier. He wasn't hiding it, but no one was really listening either. He joked about not making it to 40. People laughed. Then he didn't. He was supposed to start a tour. Instead, they found his body. The man who once strutted across stages like a god died on a dirty floor, surrounded by silence. There were rumors. Was it an accident? Was it intentional? Does it matter? The man who gave the world "Never Tear Us Apart" was torn apart long before the rope finished the job. Michael didn't go out in glory. He slipped into the dark, covered in chemicals and regret. And the world only really listened to what he was saying once he stopped singing. 18. Tommy Bolin. Tommy Bolin played guitar like he was born with strings in his veins. Blues, rock, funk, he didn't follow rules. He bent them until they screamed. He played with James Gang, with Deep Purple. As a solo artist, he was just starting to show the world what he could really do. His fingers were fast, his soul restless. And it didn't last. December 4th, 1976, Miami, just 25 years old. Found dead in a hotel room after a show. Opioids and stimulants, same toxic cocktail that's taken too many. His final concert was hours earlier. He'd played through pain, barely able to move his arm. But he didn't cancel, didn't complain. He smiled. He gave the crowd fire, even as he was fading. He'd struggled with substances for years. Everyone knew, everyone saw it. But talent excuses a lot, until it doesn't. They said he looked tired, pale, off. But when the show ends, no one's backstage checking your pulse. His solo record, Private Eyes, had just dropped. The critics were calling it genius, a new phase, a comeback. But there was no phase 2, just silence, just another young talent whose body couldn't keep up with the weight of his escape. There was no blaze of glory, just a hotel room, a needle, and another thing that could have been carved into rock history. And in doing so, he silenced something the world never got enough of. 19. John Entwistle. John Entwistle wasn't flashy. He didn't leap across stages or throw guitars. He just stood there, stone-faced, calm, and made the ground shake. The ox, the thunder inside the Who. While the rest of the band exploded, he anchored them with fingers that moved like machines. He didn't talk much. He didn't need to. His bass did the screaming. June 27, 2002, Las Vegas. Hard Rock Hotel. He was 57 years old. Dead just hours before the Who's reunion tour was set to begin. Cause of death, heart attack brought on by a stimulant overdose. A strip club dancer was in the room. He'd been partying. But this wasn't some wild rock star moment. It was a man chasing a feeling he'd been missing for years. He had heart problems. He knew it. His doctors warned him. But the lifestyle never left. Not fully. The shows kept coming. The pressure never stopped. So he reached for the rush. Just one more night, like the old days. But the body doesn't forget. And that one night was all it took. The tour went on. The band grieved in motion. Fans filled arenas, but the sound had changed. You could feel the missing heartbeat, the silence behind the noise. John wasn't supposed to go out like that. Not him, not the steady one, but even the strong fall. He didn't die on stage. He died in a hotel bed, surrounded by ghosts. And when the bass went quiet, the rest of the band sounded just a little less alive. 20. Keith Moon. Keith Moon didn't play drums, he attacked them. Every fill was chaos. Every beat was war. He didn't keep time. He shattered it. The Who called him Moon the Loon, and he lived up to it. He blew up toilets, drove cars into pools, passed out on stage, then got back up and played like a hurricane, but the same madness that made him a legend was eating him alive. September 7th, 1978. London. He was 32 years old, died in his sleep after taking clomethiazole, a substance prescribed to curb alcohol cravings. He took 32 pills, way more than he was supposed to. He didn't do it to party. He did it to stop drinking, to get clean, and it ended him. He'd tried, really tried, but the damage was done. His body was already fragile. The booze, the substances, the chaos, they had been stacking up for years. He wasn't Keith anymore, just the shadow of the storm. He died alone, in bed, after a quiet dinner with his girlfriend. No fans, no stage, just sleep turned into silence. The man who made the drums roar went out without a sound. When the news hit, people didn't believe it. Not Keith, not the one who always bounced back. But even legends run out of chances. Keith Moon was a walking explosion, and when he finally went still, it was more shocking than any crash he ever caused.